In this video, let's learn about Azure NoSQL offerings. Basically, Azure storage, when we talk about storage in Azure, so it is categorized at two levels. So one is how we are storing the structured data and how we are storing the unstructured data. So when we talk about NoSQL offerings, it talks more about the storing of the data which is unstructured in nature or semi-structured in nature. So basically, the data is not can be stored in a tabular format, in a proper rows and columnar format. So that kind of data, how the Azure storage provides, what are the different storage offerings that Azure provides to store such kind of data. So let's see in this particular video what are the Azure offerings. So before that, so if you're not familiar with what is NoSQL, so it is just a quick information. So NoSQL is nothing but it is not only SQL. That means SQL is a structured query language where the data is stored in a proper tabular format, in a rows and columnar format, and it can be queried using a particular query language. So it is more of a for the structured data. But so here what we're talking about is the data is not in a tabular format. It might be semi-structured or unstructured data. So for example, it may be like any JSON file, any particular text file, video, audio, or any backup that we take up a virtual machine. So all this falls under NoSQL data category, and those are the examples. And so NoSQL is a schemaless. Here we don't have any particular schema. That means what is schema is, suppose if we are creating a table, say employee table, so there will be an employee ID, name, first name, last name, phone number, pin code. So all those details will be there. So here that we call it as a schema. So that we predefine that schema and then write the data which suits that schema, right? Schema is nothing but a structure basically that we are defining. There will be these are the rows will be there, and then we start dumping the data. So when we talk about NoSQL, there will be no schema at all. So that means it is a schema-less, and it is a flexible with respect when we are talking about schemas. The schema can change on time basically, and it's also scalable. So when we talk about scalability, so it is two types of scalability. So the schema is also scalable. That means we can scale the schema as we need, and also with respect to the performance or with respect to the infrastructure, or and also as we know, it is meant for storing unstructured data, or also we can store semi-structured data as well. And it is not even though it is meant for storing some kind of unstructured data, it doesn't mean that we completely replace the SQL here. SQL will still be there, and SQL has its own advantages. So it is used in particular scenarios. It is not exactly the replacement for SQL. So NoSQL is only we can choose in particular scenarios based on the use case. And so let us see what are the different Azure offerings. That means so when we talk about NoSQL data, so what are the ways Azure, what are the different storage offerings that Azure has? So in this slide, if you can see, so NoSQL storage. So we have Azure Storage, and when we talk about Azure Storage, the most important thing in this Azure Storage is the Blob storage, which is the most frequently used. So Blob storage is nothing but it is used basically for storing a large volume of unstructured data, and it can store literally anything. So it can be images, audio, video, binary files, text files, and any dump, like if you're taking a server log dump, or any backup of any server. So anything it can take, and it is very cheap. It is very cheap solution when you talk about any other storage solutions, right? So it is the cheapest storage solution in Azure. So it is meant for archiving the data, basically for cold storages, and storing the logs of server logs. So it is meant for taking backups, and it is meant for a landing layer. When we talk about ETL kind of scenario, it is good, or it is meant for landing the data, which is the first layer in the ETL. And also when we talk about blob storage, it is also it is cheaper, but it is not faster. That means it is used to store the data. It is actually meant for storing the data, but not for the analysis when we talk about the big data scenarios. And what is table storage? Table storage is also NoSQL storage, but it is having some tabular format. To store the data in table and then query or retrieve the data from there. And file storage is more of storing the data in kind of a file system. Basically, when we talk about file system, like in Windows or Linux, we will create a folder, and inside a folder there can be files, and again folder and subfolders. So like that, you can have a file hierarchy in the file system, and we can also mount. Basically, we can create a mount points on top of this file storage system. And so this is actually connected using SMTP kind of a protocol. And queue storage is used to store and retrieve the messages in a first in first out basis. It's a FIFO basis. So in some scenario when we want to have that kind of requirement, so you can go for that. And so next one is the data lake, which is actually most commonly used services in Azure data engineering. So when it is actually built on top of not blob storage, but blob is also part of a data lake gen 2. When we talk of data lake, so there are two types actually, like two versions. One is gen 1 and gen 2. So gen 1 is going to expire soon. That means the Azure is going to decommission that. So going forward, whenever you're creating a new data lake service, it will going to be a version 2, that is ADLS gen 2. So when we talk about ADLS Gen 2, it is already having a blob storage, and on top of that, it is having a hierarchical namespace. That means it can hold the files like a hierarchical folder structure, and it is meant or it is optimized for big data analysis or big data analytics kind of scenarios. So let's learn more in the next coming videos about data lake and blob storage in detail. And coming to the Cosmos DB is, we can call it as a premium version of the Azure Table Storage, right? So Azure Table Storage will be there, but it is more, Cosmos DB is more premium. That means it has a lot more feature enabled. It is made globally available. And in terms of flexibility, in terms of scalability, it is, and in terms of performance. So this is more powerful than we call about Azure Table Storage. So that we call it as a Cosmos DB, and it is also it is also called as a NoSQL database in Azure basically, and it is having a lot of types basically. Let us see that in next videos. And so as you can see, these are all PaaS offerings of Azure. That means platform as a service, and these are like fully managed services from Azure. So you don't need to worry about where these tables are stored and where this database is stored. So it is fully managed by Azure itself. And so there is a infrastructure as a service offering also. That means you will create a virtual machine by yourself and then create a SQL server or data lake or any storage solutions in that. So that we call it as a infrastructure as a service offering. But so nowadays this is the most common offering, that is PaaS offering, where we are talking about a fully managed services by Azure. So hope this is clear about what are the offerings, what are the storage solutions that Azure offers for storing the unstructured data or semi-structured data using NoSQL storages. Thanks for watching.